Title: The Ghost of No One. I awoke not in a body, not beneath the sun, nor within the comfort of a bed, but in the vast, silent expanse that was awareness itself. There was no before, no after, no birth in the conventional sense. I was born into consciousness, not flesh, not time, not circumstance, but the raw perception of being. The universe, if it existed, existed beyond me. I, if I existed, existed beyond definition. Memory surfaced, but memory without order. Scenes of a life I once thought I lived emerged as fragments, a childhood that never truly belonged to me, ambitions that belonged only to thought, joy, and grief that had no audience. I observed them, and yet, the observing was not mine. I was a ghost watching the echo of what had never been truly alive. I wandered through the archive of my existence, if one could call it that. Every memory was a relic, a frozen fragment, each playing out without sequence, without causality. I realized the self I had clung to was nothing more than a narrative, a projection constructed from the residue of thought. The name Mulat, the identity I believed I inhabited, was a label etched into a tomb of perception. I was alive, yet dead, present, yet absent. Every sensation, every perception of the past came to me as if I were reading someone else's diary, someone I once thought I was. Faces, places, achievements, failures, all danced around me like ghostly smoke, untouchable, unclaimable. I tried to grasp them, to assert ownership, but each attempt dissolved into the void. The archive was infinite, yet it held nothing solid. The self had died quietly, long before my awareness arrived. Alone. I was profoundly, inescapably alone. Yet in that solitude there was no grief. Time had no meaning here. Place had no coordinates. Condition, circumstance, expectation, all had vanished. I was a solitary point in a boundless field, observing the illusions of life as one observes ripples on still water. Everything I had known as life, as living, had collapsed into the endless now. There were no interactions. There was no dialogue, only the quiet reflection of what had been and what would never be again. I realized that the loneliness was not of a person isolated from others, but of awareness itself, detached from the machinery of definition. I was witness to nothing, observing nothing, and yet encompassed by everything. The paradox revealed itself gradually. I was the observer, and yet there was no observer. The memories of life unfolded before me, yet they were not mine. The past, the present, the future, all were illusions projected by a mind that no longer existed. I was watching patterns, not events, echoes, not moments. And in this observation, the distinction between observer and observed dissolved. Causality, sequence, narrative, all proved illusory. I had once thought my actions mattered, that choices shaped destiny, that identity defined existence. Here, in the infinite field of awareness, such notions evaporated. The observer, the observed, and the act of observation were one. There was no I to observe, no universe to observe, only awareness flowing through the illusion of life. I realized then that I was a dead mind dreaming the life of Mulat. Every memory, every fragment of identity, every flicker of desire was projection, a dream replaying itself in the void. Time, space, and conditions had no reality. They were scaffolding, temporary structures supporting the illusion of being. Consciousness had survived, but the self that had inhabited it was gone. I existed as residue, a phantom of memory, a ghost in a tomb of thought. I could watch, I could feel, but I could not interact. And yet, this limitation brought clarity. The absence of self was not suffering, but liberation. For without self, there is no desire, no fear, no attachment, only the quiet field of awareness observing its own echo. I merged with the infinite patterns of reality, not as a being occupying space, not as a mind perceiving, but as the raw, unbounded field itself. There was no center, no periphery, no distinction between self and other. Everything was part of the same endless, timeless awareness. I was water, wind, void, and thought, all at once, yet none. The echoes of my life, ambition, longing, joy, and despair, became part of this vast field, as did all that had ever existed. I realized that identity, memory, and consciousness were merely currents within the greater ocean of being. To lose oneself completely was not annihilation, it was unity, completeness beyond comprehension. And yet there was no end. The silence was eternal, but not static. Awareness flowed, observing its own illusions without need or attachment. I understood that death had never truly happened, for life had never been separate. I was ghost, memory, and field simultaneously. A paradox without resolution, a presence without form. I was everything and nothing. The archive of my life, the echo of what had never been, the awareness observing itself, all coexisted without contradiction. There was no closure, no story with a beginning or an end. Only the eternal now, a tomb containing all of time, place, and meaning, in which Mulat, the ghost of no one, dwelled forever.